Alright, now we're continuing on with Napoleon at Leipzig, which is, according to the little logo here, Volume 3 in the Library of Napoleonic Battles. And I still could have sworn that Four Lost Battles here was part of the Library of Napoleonic Battles, but according to the numbering, it would not be. This would be the first one, second one, Leipzig is the third. So it is what it is, I guess. This is the first of the games in the Library of Napoleonic Battles to utilize a single image on the cover as opposed to doing the 4 images and listing each of the battles. It may be because there's only one battle here, Leipzig, so you wouldn't have multiple images. But it is interesting that this format here, this graphic style, ends up representing the rest of the games in the series too, as they continue. So even though future games in the series have more than one battle in the box, they will continue to use the singular image as opposed to moving back to 4 different images. So as made clear from the title, this is Leipzig. That's all it is, as opposed to multiple battles, but it is a fairly lengthy one, and it's also massive. So it would make sense that that this could easily take up an entire box. Also interesting on here is this 1813 to 2013, the Bicentennial Edition. I know this pops up on the La Patrie en Danger, and also the upcoming or currently released, or most recently released, Napoleon's Last Gamble, which has Waterloo. Although I think that came out last year, or I think it came out this year, but is dated last year, which was actually the bicentennial of Waterloo, which was 1815. So, but it may have come out, in December or something. I think it came out late last year, but if not early this year. But I'm not positive on that, so I don't know. Maybe it was officially in 2015 when it came out. Anyway, by now familiar layout. A little less wordy than some of the previous ones. Now the map seems to have gotten bigger. And we can see here the retreat after the Battle of Leipzig. Give you a little context. And it looks like this includes the Battle of Hanau, so it's not just Leipzig. There's another battle in there. Interesting. And here, as opposed to the 2 shrink-wrapped decks of cards, they're all bundled into one stack. So, but this will be the same. It'll be about half. Split this deck in about half, and it'll be French and Allied cards. Here we have the rules of play. Slightly different picture, but we do have the branding now. Library of Napoleonic Battles system rules, just with a different picture on the cover than what the current, most recent version of the rules has on the cover. Let's see if this is moved. Yep. So this is the first one, I believe, to use what I call the GMT style of layout, which, just about every set of GMT rules you'll see use this font, this particular font and layout for their headers and subheaders. So it looks very much to me like a GMT style. And of course you got your key there of all your counter pieces. In terms of length, it's about 24 pages, so I think these have gotten a little bit shorter than previous versions of the rules, so it may be the change in formatting is what led to that. Not positive though. And again, you got your TEC on the back. Here we have our study folder for Leipzig. And it's interesting that it lists all these names here. Liebert Volkwitz, Wachau Mokern, Leipzig, and Hanau. So I guess there's some pre-fight stuff, then the main fight, and then Hanau is the retreat. So again, and I actually don't know a whole lot about Leipzig, except that it was massive. It was like the biggest battle of the Napoleonic Wars, basically. But there are individual scenarios here. It's not one massive battle. You can do the different scenarios that make up the whole of the campaign, if you will. And so all this looks similar in terms of doing your setup, listing out all reinforcements, individual scenario restrictions, and so forth. I think these are already into designer's notes. Yeah, historical notes, starting page 11. And as per usual Zucker style, they are thorough and lengthy. So you've got, a good 22, 23 pages of historical notes. Then you've got designer's notes. And then you get your notes to the combat tables here. And the CRT itself on the back of that. And then our folder with the card rules. It's interesting that they tailor these to each game. It seems like it would be cheaper just to have one set of generic card rules, in stock, and you just print that with every new release and just stick that in the box. So it's because, as far as I know, this is all identical, from game to game. So I guess the card manifest would be different. So that's probably why they have an individual, because they include the card manifest in here. These are going to be tailored to each game, so that makes sense. Victory worksheet. This is the same. So you keep track of victory points, abbreviated sequence of play. Again, still a sheet rather than a card. It would be kind of nice to have card stock, but again, if you really want card stock, I guess you can always put your own on there. Order slips on the back of that. That's the same with every release. The combat table folder here, that's the same as every release. This one includes the notes. And I went back to this. The last game, they just had the combat tables, but did not have the notes. They had the combat tables on the card stock, but didn't have the notes on the other side. So, and that's on the card stock piece. Usually, this is always included. This folder. And so here we have the update, and we'll take a look at the counters. And the counters, by now also very familiar. And all these, so far, regardless of size, have all had 2 counter sheets. No more, no less. Which is interesting, given that the number of battles is different. The early ones were all 4 battles. The later ones, La Patrie en Danger and Napoleon against Russia have, I think La Patrie has 5, and Napoleon against Russia has also 5. So here, the counter sheets. This one, obviously, just the main battle and then the one additional battle. But the counter sheets here, very similar to what we've seen. Your French units. It looks like, interestingly, there's lots of these red units, I believe, are Polish units. Judging by the names, lots of skis. And there's more than I've seen in any other scenario. So truly the Battle of Nations here. You've got lots of different backgrounds, but these look like all French. These are all French units and then various allies of the French. So interesting. And the darker colored ones there, I believe, are Guard. Yeah, which is usually the case. So that's interesting. Some more, a little more color variation, and then you've got the Russians, the Prussians, and the Austrians. And then I'm not sure who the green guys are. Bavarians, it looks like. And then some yellow guys. That's Bernadotte and the Swedes. So there's your allied units. But again, very pretty counters in these games. I like the little pictures of the leaders on each of the counters. Lends a little bit of history to it instead of just having a generic counter with no image on it, or just some image of a French flag or a Russian eagle or something. So That's kind of cool. And then here we get into more of these setup cards, and there are quite a few for a battle this big. Looks like single-sided again. Seems like they could have made those double-sided, and it would save money on cardstock. But there are two French setups, and these are your. It's got your hexes where each unit is set up, and then assorted information about each of the ones that's set up. So, and it's broken down by date, which you can see here. So here's what units you'll set up where, depending on the date. Looks like we have casualty record tracks for the French, one with the CRT on there. It's the turn record track for the French, and it's just interesting. Each side has its own turn record track, which is kind of nice in that it makes it easier to put reinforcements. You don't have to squeeze all the reinforcements onto the board. So it looks like. Yeah, so different dates, 13th through 16th October here, 17th through 19th here. So, and then we got your Allied, and I think they have more setup cards. There's two, yeah, they've got 3 setup cards as compared to the French 2. And then here is their casualty record tracks, also with the CRT. And the coalition turn record broken down the same way, 13th through 16th October. 17th through 19th on the second one. And then we have turn record track for the extra battle of Hanau, which is included. And this one's not broken down by side. Both sides will use it. Here's your holding boxes. Very familiar, different color. Seems to be it's a different color every game. Weather tables, weather effects. And it doesn't look like there's historical weather on here. No, La Patrie has historical weather, so maybe that starts in later editions. Here's your combat tables, combat notes on cardstock, and the maps. So we have, that's the Hanau map, and it looks like we've got a north map and a south map for Leipzig itself. Unfortunately, I only got the one table here to lay this stuff out on, so I won't be able to lay the maps out in total. But yeah, you can see at the top edge here, so this is the south map, so there'll be a 2-map connection. As you can see, there's no border on that top edge, the northern edge of the map. And again, this is these are the Charlie Kibler maps. So this looks like all the newer maps in the series have this great sort of detail, for some of the graphics, which is kind of nice compared to the older maps. So that is the south map. And given the scale of this, the sort of brigade level scale, 2 maps is pretty big. And then here, oops, upside down. Here is the north map, and you can see here in the middle of the large city of Leipzig. Now that's the biggest city I've seen on one of these maps. And you can see it's kind of like several solid hexes of just cityscape. And then the graphics that have usually been used for towns and villages on the outside, or the outskirts. So, with maps, but then, tons of room here then on the north side of Leipzig for maneuver. So, as you can see, lots of maneuver capability on the 2-map setup. Now, I think there are scenarios that break it down by map, so you don't have to use both maps every time. And then last but not least, we have the Hanau map, which looks like it's mostly woods, along with Hanau itself, of course. But you can see here major woods, so unless you're fighting over here on the plains near Hanau, not going to be a lot of cavalry fighting going on here. So these are the maps. So most of these have these larger maps than what I'm playing La Patrie en Danger there, and most of the maps for that are these little small ones. So like quad style, what I consider true quad style maps. So interesting here to see the larger maps for most of these other games that I've looked at, even some of the earlier quad games that all use larger maps. So there we have Napoleon at Leipzig, the Bicentennial Edition.